Hello and welcome, sensitive gangsters. Welcome back. We are here today because there's actually a specific situation why I wanted to do a reading right now because I wanted to go to an event. I was planning it. I was like, I'm gonna go alone. I'm gonna have like a little date with myself, cute. And it's on my birthday because my birthday's today. And I'm like, what? Like, I was already stressed out. Like, I was not feeling well. I was like, I can't. I'm not gonna go. I think I was planning this. I was like excited for it. I made like my some of my patches because I wanted to have more bands on my fucking like what do you call it? Jacket. What's it called? Battle vest. Battle vest. For those punks under you. But I don't know if you say it like that. Anyways, um, so I was kind of bummed out about that, but at the same time, like I am still happy because I feel better with this choice because it's a heavy metal festival, which would be great, but it's not great if you're already overstimulated, if you have a headache, like which is what I have right now. And I'm like, I can't do this right now. I'm just gonna not enjoy it, So, and it's great because it's, also very much helpful in this political situation right now because they obviously have a very specific stance on things, and you can already know that I would feel comfortable there. Anybody from any background would feel comfortable there because you are actually trying to protect those people and you're not lying like everybody fucking else or, perpetuating some kind of narrative. And it can be so draining if you're the kind of person that tries to speak up for things and like especially if you are maybe in a more privileged position. I'm obviously not the most privileged, but I do have some privilege and I benefit from some privilege. So I'm like, I gotta use it. I gotta use it, but then I don't have the privilege of having all that energy to do the things. And like, I still have to care about myself, which is something I need to learn because I did not learn it when I was like, I was overextending myself, so I need to also chill and I can't always be everywhere. And that's just gonna be the way it is. And, you know, I just have to accept that sometimes. And it's not because I'm the worst person ever or whatever. Like I'm not doing something that I actually wanted to do. Like I'm still going to school, I'm doing this and that, the things that I have to do, but I'm not going to do the things that I actually enjoy, because I'm already drained from everything else. I'm like, that just sucks. And you're trying to get help, because you can't fucking support your life. I mean, even people who are well educated, they have issues finding a job. Like someone with a master's degree, fucking needing social support, like social security, Anyways, I don't have to tell you if you're watching this and you resonate with this because I don't think anybody who's like running this platform right now is gonna watch this, like the ones who are benefiting from our work, by the way. Um, Anyways, let's go. Let's go into it because I'm so done and I just want to be authentic because I think that's what we need right now and I don't feel like there's any gain from continuing to be fake. It's like and I'm seeing other people do it and it's so refreshing and I'm like I'm going to do like this is what I'm here for. Like what do you mean? This is what I'm here for. All right. So we're going to look at how can we now refocus our energy? How can we not, go into that negative self-talk? The last video was about, how can you cultivate more positive thinking? And now we're going to go back into it like in the actual situation. If you resonate with this at all, or maybe you've had a similar situation, this may be for you. But it's definitely about something, something personal that, for some reason makes you not able to do things that you actually want to do, or, just being so disabled by society or so shunned and then being blamed for it, being excluded by society, by the system that be, and you understand that because you have experienced it and you may know other people who have gone through similar things and they understand that certain people like the police, for example, are not there to protect them, like you have to understand all of the systems that are playing out and how they are playing out also within your own circle. And harmless things that people like say that you think are harmless are part of that, you know, and they might not even understand because they might be extremely privileged and they never had to think about that. And it's fucking annoying if you are the one having to like argue with them, or you're not even arguing with them because they won't even take you seriously because they think you are the crash out. You are the one that is the problem. Like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. Are you me? Did you grow up in this world right now? Like, I don't think you did. I do not think you did. You might have your own life, you know, you might have your own fucking whatever. I don't know. I'm just fed up. I'm fed up. And that's the appropriate reaction. If you're not doing that, if you're not reacting like that, then that means either you have some kind of privilege, you benefit somehow from the system, you don't want to question it, or you deliberately like want to continue it because you don't care. You don't give a fuck about other people. You don't even give a fuck about your own family because you don't consider them family. I don't know. You just don't care. You just don't care, and it's so easy not to care. It's so easy. It's so easy. You don't have to think. You don't have to do anything. Just ignore. Ignore, 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 ignore. Anyways, sorry, this was personal. And you also have to be decent. You have to talk in a way that is appropriate. Oh, bourgeois, Digga. Also, no. You have to say it in a way so that you're gonna be taken serious, right? You can't have an emotional outburst because emotional outbursts are taken not seriously, you know? That somehow, even though it kind of says something about what is actually happening and what you're constantly hearing about from other people in your own life, the things that are happening, the things that people don't talk about, but we know that they're happening, right? We know. And the narratives, like, they don't align with reality, and it's like, this makes no sense. And it's very obvious to you if that's not your lived reality, but if the lived reality is closer to that narrative, you're more likely to fall for it. You know what I'm saying? And it's just easier, you know, and then you can play the victim for not being able to say racial slurs anymore. What? What the hell? Like, I'm not gonna blame you if you don't know something, and if you're like, oh, sorry, I didn't know, like, that's one thing. But if you're actively complaining about something like that, I'm like, and you are like one of the most privileged people in this world right now, like part of that group, then I'm like, I cannot take you seriously. Why would you talk about me in a way that is so disrespectful, pretending like you're not doing it, by the way, pretending like you're the god, you know everything about everything, and you have no problems, and I don't know what you. Okay, that definitely needs to get out. Okay, so we got to take care of this stuff. I'm definitely like learning about not, you know, cutting people off because of course it's also easy, you know, it's easy to just cut people off because it's a lot of work to stay in those relationships if you're that person that is like less privileged and kind of like trying to make people aware of things, and you're then always the one that's like crashing out, and you're the annoying one, you're the one that always has to say something about something, and then you're also, you know, you will look like the person that also thinks that they know everything. And I get that point, you know, but it's not just about that. It's also about even being able to talk about it at all, which is not possible with certain people because they don't even give you an in. And then you also feel like, well, why even try? But yeah, that's unfortunately, if you look into history, it's always the people that are the most marginalized. They're always the ones that are at the forefront of any kind of movement. They're the ones that also get the first, you know, backlash. They are the ones that get killed. They are the ones that are doing all the work and even benefiting you because you're going to live in a better world that is actually not going to shun you. Like, make it make sense. Make it make sense, please, I am not stupid, all right? I can understand. That's why I'm here and arguing about it, because I am kind of sick and tired of being lied to. I'm kind of sick and tired of being not being taken seriously, of people thinking just because you look a certain way, you make a certain choice, whatever it is. Like, for example, having colorful hair. That's already something. Oh, you're mentally ill, like because you have like that's the stupidest thing I've ever freaking heard. If you're not mentally ill in this freaking society, I don't know what's wrong with you because you are not human. And I'm not trying to even dehumanize you. I'm trying to see the human in you. I'm like, how does this work? How does this work? Because I'm not trying to dehumanize you. That's what a lot of other people are doing, right? They're trying to, paint certain people as second class citizens, as less than human, as not worthy because they don't work or they don't do this, they don't act like that. It's just hypocritical. It's freaking annoying to live in that society, but you just cannot not just express yourself, because if you don't, you're just depressed. That's just what's gonna happen, because you are so caged in and you believe all these narratives that brainwash you into thinking that you, single being, are the problem, and there's no systematic issue. Don't question the system, please don't, because then you would expose us, and then whoever is in a privileged position, oh, I will lose my status, right? And this is something I don't even know how this happens, but I know that there was psychological studies on, and we can talk about psychology, also very shady, but there was a psychological study done on two groups where they had to, like, first they had to compete, and then in the second task they had to collaborate. And when they tried to collaborate, they went with the option where they would get the least, but compared to the other group, it was such a big difference. They were more concerned of having like a big difference to the other group so they can feel superior or more superior, rather than getting more and still being, you know, somewhat away from them. And there was also the option to like balance it out evenly, but that's not what they chose. They chose the part where everyone gets less, but the difference is so significant that they can feel, oh, but we still have a lot more than you. So therefore, we're fine. Or whatever. I don't know if anybody's ever going to see this, but if you in the future are looking at it, go ahead. All right, I was going to ask something, but I didn't ask it yet, but I kind of had it in my mind already. And it's about like how to like channel this, energy now, and like what to focus on, because we don't want to do this self-deprecation anymore. We're trying to change our minds. Like we're trying to like actively work with our mind and our body and teach our body that all of the experiences that we had were valid in the way, even if they were, irrational or something, still valid because you have that experience in your body and you're programmed to have that experience in your body, because you're not supposed to. Either you function, and if you don't function, then you're the problem, right? Like, you know what fascists don't like? They don't like colorful hair. They don't like creativity because they can't do it. They can't make art. They can't do it. They just can't, right? They want everybody to be the same miserable fuck as they are. They don't want to connect with you. They could connect with you. You could teach them a thing or two, but they're looking down on you so they can feel better about themselves. And isn't that a pattern there, right? The people who are the bullies, the people who are the people that try to bully other people and put them down and whatnot, or like always get in trouble or whatever it is. Who do they become when they're older? Who like. Mm, Sometimes people say they don't change. I don't know if people change, because change is the most natural thing that there is. Change is always going to happen. And that's why I always believe also that people can change, but they have to be willing to do it. And then there are a bunch of also other psychological effects that affect decision making and the idea that you have about the world, the way you look at the world, right? And everybody experiences it. Doesn't matter if you're mentally ill or not. This is just a psychological thing in human beings, right? Anyways, this obviously needed to get out, but we have the Eight of Wands, which is swift action. You gotta do something. You gotta put it into something. Like, let me just. Okay. You gotta channel it somewhere with action. And, recently I was hearing again about that love is an action, right? Like, people talk about love and they're like, oh, love is a feeling, love is this. But some people argue that love is an action, and I do get that, because sometimes you do acts of love, or there are also the love languages, right? Like, of course, I'm not saying that any of it is legitimate or not. I don't know exactly how the discourse is there, but like, you're a human being. You have some kind of experience. I mean, I think people probably have different ideas about what love is, and all of the debates that we're having, like these intimate things. If you talk about something, you don't necessarily know what the other person means. If one person says relationship and another person says relationship, they may have very different ideas in their mind what that means to them, and yeah, it's all right. Let's move on. I'm so done with social media at this point. Like, certain people still are doing a lot of good work on social media, but like, and you reach people there, of course. That's why right-wing people are using it. That's why you need to be there to kind of counteract that, and then people are doing it, and I applaud those people. But like, it's so exhausting. It's so like, why? Why? What to do with this? What to do? Interesting. Six of Swords. Are we going on an adventure here? Are we going somewhere? I mean, this doesn't necessarily mean. Oh, the Lovers. What did I just say about love? All right, so we have the Eight of Wands, which is swift action. Like, it's not just action; it's like swift action, like right away. Like, you fire energy. Do something now. Rapid action. Quick decisions. Movement. Keep that in mind. Movement is good, to get emotions out and stuff like that. And there is, the thing is, all of these things are connected, right? Like, the political things that are happening, there is a red thread there, even though if it's not obvious to anyone, But for example, with the hair, what I just said, fascists don't like color because they want everybody to look the same, right? So like, everybody's just replaceable. There's no identity really in that case. No personal identity in that way. But what I was gonna say? Yes, movement, because movement, or like certain movements, are kind of like seen like as bad if they're like, you know, people have this like idea, like, as the bourgeois idea of like, oh, you have to act like this, like the proper way to act, right? And whenever someone, like people of color, do something, it's like, and they just, dance, they twerk, they do like, they just move their bodies, and especially this part of your body, which is the sacral area, right? Like this, it makes sense. It's like the sexual, where the sexual organs are, like it's activating that creative energy, and they don't know how to move their hips. They don't know how to activate that because they're like, no, I have to be like this. I have to be like a robot. I can't move. I can't talk like this. I can't be eccentric. I can't express myself. Only like very hateful, of course. Like that's what you could do to fucking spread propaganda. That's great, but we're not here to do that. We're trying to find solutions. We're trying to make people not be miserable anymore. We're trying to understand that you are not the problem. Okay, the system is, and you need to understand who you are within that system. What are you doing? What are you participating in? You don't have to immediately shun yourself. You don't have to hate yourself. You just have to acknowledge and understand what is your position, and now what are you going to do with that, but we're not focusing on that right now. We're just focusing on how to like use this energy where usually you would go into self-hatred, you would go into self-deprecation, those kind of ideas in your mind, or maybe you even say it out loud or whatever it is. But that's literally what also is driving these people, because they're so self-hating that they're just projecting it onto everybody else, you know? Like, some people say that Trump is a narcissist, for example. And narcissists usually, like, if they have, like, we all have narcissistic parts of ourselves. It's just part of being human, but there is narcissistic personality disorder, and if you do have that, which I'm not saying that Trump does, but like, you know, they usually have a lot of self-hatred. They usually do. Like, you might think that they're like super in love with themselves because they're like, very self-focused on themselves, but in reality they're just so focused on themselves because they hate on themselves. They don't love on themselves. If they would project that outward. And if that's from my perspective, from my layman perspective, I think, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense to me. And then, transition. Leaving behind. See, I was like, oh, we're going on an adventure, but this doesn't necessarily mean like physical move. It could mean physical move, but it's also transition. Moving on from something, moving on from that type of behavior, from that type of thinking, leaving that behind because you already know. At this point, you already know. Enough things have been exposed, enough work has been done. You know. Your body just doesn't know yet. And usually that's the thing, but your body usually knows before you even cognitively can know. That's why you need to be so connected with your body. And what this system promotes is disconnection. Disconnection from your own body, disconnection from other people, divide and conquer, right? This is all a political strategy. It's, it's more complicated, but when you see these red lines going through all of it, you can see the patterns. You can see how you fit into those patterns, how other people around you fit into those patterns, and you just cannot unsee it. And that's the best and the worst thing about it, because you can't unsee it, so you still have to live in the same situation before you can change anything. And then you just constantly see it, and you're like, oh my goodness, I cannot. But then also you cannot forget that knowledge. Like, you have made that step, so now you can actually, like, you will not forget that, so you will make moves towards letting go some of the negative self-talk that you've been programmed to have, right? And we have the lovers, and I feel like love will pull it all together, because we have it also kind of in the middle. Let me see what the other cards are here. So we have the Hierophant, which I think is the High Priest, right? Yeah. So tradition, conformity, morality, and ethics. And I think that might be it too, because you're kind of coming back to that, right? It can be seen as different things. Like, tradition can be in conformity, right? That's what we're looking at here, also with fascism, right? I can find belonging with people that accept me as who I am. So I think it is about, not the narrative about morality, but the idea about morality and what is actually ethical, because it's not ethical to, manipulate an entire population into thinking that they are the problem, even though they're systematically being poisoned or, being made sick because of the way we live, and the people that want to control your every move. But see, let me see. Because we also have the Ten of Swords, which is failure, collapse, and defeat. And that's interesting. See, I'm seeing different things. Different things are coming to my mind, because I was first thinking like, wait, how does this fit in? But now, like, but with what I said, of course, because we're kind of going against that thing. But now with the Ten of Swords, after that, it's like, oh, we need love as a conduit, right? As a conduit for communication with people, because what they're doing is also using hate as communication. But we're supposed to use love as communication. And these systems, these ideas that are made up, right? Because we make things up, that's what we do. Um, Unfortunately, also the God that told you these things was also made up. I'm sorry, but that's just the way I see the world. Okay, I don't have anything against religious beliefs. It's more about the doctrine and the more extreme fundamentalist people that are trying to like control the entire world. That's what I'm more worried about. Um, but what I see here is that if we do connect somehow and move on from maybe also the hurt part of us, maybe we have some wounds ourselves that have to do with these things, and we might not want to touch them because it hurts, of course. It's not comfortable to do that, but I feel like if we can do it, and if we can do it with love, then it will break down. It can only break down because you're actually trying to connect with the human being. You're not trying to argue with them. You're not trying to tell them, oh, you're wrong, oh, you're so bad, and blah, 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 blah. Because that's the reaction that will immediately come because of this entire society right now, the way, it spreads everywhere, right? Then everybody's just on edge all the time. Fucking, like, why is this person hating on me? And then I'm hating on them, and then blah, blah, blah. And of course, there are certain, like, there are certain people who are actually, like, victims of something and they're actual perpetrators of something. Like, there are certain things that you cannot be like, well, they're a victim and it's their fault that they're a victim. There are clear boundaries here. We can talk about this is not what we're talking about right now, but like, I just want to say that. But we have swift action, we have moving on, we have transformation, and then see action, love is action, is what I said. Love is an action. We need to move on with love. And we need to face the Hierophant. We need to face it because the Hierophant is not necessarily bad, but certain traditions, certain conformity is bad. It's harming people. That's what we're kind of trying to look at. And morality and ethics, especially morality, especially in a church, like this is kind of gives a vibe of a religious figure because it's also the high priest, the priest, right? And morality usually is used to control people, to control what they do, what they think is allowed and whatnot. But it's not God doing that, it's a person doing that to other people. And we need to look at it the way it actually is, even if it's difficult, even if you're someone who believes so strongly in things, and you can still believe in something, but you cannot believe the person that is trying to manipulate you, you know? And that's a hard truth to recognize if you've been living like that, maybe your entire life, who knows? But it will lead to collapse of that. That's what I'm reading here, because when I accept an ending, I also release myself from its power. And that's the thing, because I was talking about the negative self-talk, and this is the thing that you are getting indoctrinated to do, right? And some people have moved more away from it, and I certainly have, because I moved away from religion, and I was like questioning things, and I was, a long time I identified as a atheist, and I was questioning these things because I was allowed to do it because of my faith didn't, hold me back from that. I still had certain ideas and I still was looking at other religious people and was like, wow, that's crazy. But then I do see the same patterns around me as well, and I'm like, you're just believing that because this person, like, and I'm lucky that I don't have super extreme religious, family or anything, luckily, because I would have probably had a problem growing up in that environment. But, you know, um, because it can hurt, it can hurt if you're comfortable, if your comfort space is like being negative with yourself, because you're like, well, okay, then I can just punish myself and then it's okay. Like, for example, with I think, in Catholic Church, it's more that kind of thing. Like there's sin, right? Like sin already exists. So, and then you have to punish yourself, or you have to repent. You have to do something to get rid of that, or like get rid of the guilt and the shame and the, I don't know. Even though you were placed, like this shame and guilt was placed onto you. Back in the day, you had to fucking pay for letting your sins, go and whatnot. Why do you think they're so rich? Like it's it's a system of oppression. That's what it is. And you could call it what you want, but it's a system of oppression. And so it is. And you can not see it that way, and you can disagree with me, but from my perspective, from what I have learned over the years and what we are seeing playing out all the time, it's a system of oppression, or it's a cult, which is also a system of oppression. Trying to control sexuality, trying to control what you wear as your underwear. That's like a classic cult thing. And you know what I'm saying? Like, it's weird that we want to look into people's pants. And we use trans people to justify it, but like, we're not looking at the weirdness in general. No, trans people just deserve it. They just deserve to be humiliated and dehumanized, right? Just like black people, just like any other minority group that is being oppressed by this white supremacist, patriarchal society, right? With all the hierarchies that supposedly exist naturally. Naturally. Excuse me? Excuse me? See, and the thing is, I don't even want to have discussions with people, especially not people who are not arguing with me out of good faith, right? I'd rather put it out there and just let it out, and whoever wants to discuss something, I guess. Like, I'm not doing this for people who don't care about my life, who don't care enough about me that I actually have a life to live here. I'm not doing this for them. I'm doing this for people who are like me, who are sick and tired of hurting themselves because of this entire society telling you that you are so bad, you should punish yourself, and you are the most horrible person, and you should blah, 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 and never ever question our authority over you. All right? And just keep it going. Keep it going. You're gonna be. Don't look at all the evidence that speaks against us. Don't even try. Don't even try. You can tell. I'm agitated. And if you want to get into astrology, because I identified as an atheist for a long time, but since I've gotten into spirituality, I see tarot and such, like things like that, as a tool. I don't see it as necessarily fortune telling. I don't think it's even ever been like that. I think that's probably more of like that Western lens that is like putting all kinds of nature religions into like this weird category of like, this is the worst savage thing ever, but Christianity is the one true thing that you should believe in, so we can control you. We can keep controlling you. Great, I love it. You think I'm stupid or what? You think I'm stupid? Anyways, nothing against stupid people. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You know what? I'm not sorry, because I didn't do anything bad. I was just expressing my existence, my life. Unapologetically, I am here and I exist, and I have an experience just like so many other people out there, and I'm doing this for them, for the people that have suffered enough. You have suffered enough, man. You, man, girl, whoever, non-binary, whoever you are, however you identify, you are a human being right now here on this earth, and you have an essence within you, right? You have this drive. You have dreams. You have everything that other people also have. You deserve to live. The earth gives you everything for free. You don't have to pay for it. Yes, you may have to like actually work to like take care of your crops or whatever, but that's living in a community where you actually like are not trying to fight each other all the time as one single person against one other single person. That's not how that works, you know? It's not the same thing, but people can't imagine anything else than what they've been given. They cannot. But the thing is, they have the potential to, but they've been trained and programmed not to accept and understand their own power. They have learned to be helpless. It's called learned helplessness. That is something that I've experienced, that I'm seeing around me. 1,000%, 1,000%, and it's not great. It's not nice. Like, when I imagine what I want my life to be like, I'm like, get me out of here. Get me somewhere where I can actually interact with people. Get me somewhere where I know that I'm not going to be killed. Get me somewhere where I'm just going to feel comfortable and can be part of a community and can, do my part and be appreciated for what I can bring to this world and be appreciated for my skills that I think are valuable and that other people think are valuable. Just like I can value other people for what they bring and who they are as a person. And I can celebrate them and I can be like, you know what? I'm not gonna, we may still have conflict. That's normal, but you can still, actually live together. You learn actual skills, how to relate to each other. That's not something you learn here. You learn to become either a perfect worker or a perfect manager of those workers. Essentially, just keep, and then you think those things and you understand those things when you're a teenager, but you're not going to be taken seriously at all. At least that wasn't my experience. Maybe now, I'm seeing maybe people are not being taken seriously, but I'm seeing a lot of young people being politicized, and I'm like, wow. And some of them are based. Like, I'm not saying everybody's always saying the right thing, but like, speaking up is something. And you can look at it however you want, but it's so easy to dismiss people. It's so easy, especially if you're older and you've kind of just, you've just accepted the way it is. You've just accepted the bad things. You're just like, I'm just gonna figure out how I can survive. And, that's fair. That's fair. But don't blame people for trying to have a better life, for trying to completely change the way things have been happening because they've been horrible for so many people we've lost, that were on this planet, that were, spreading love, that were fighting the good fight, and then the people who are responsible for that, they're just there sitting up there and they're fucking like, of course metaphorically, but like, they have their power, they have their protection and whatever, but you still have to fucking like go ahead and just accept it and roll over. That's kind of the argument here. Then I'm like, I can't respect you now, whoever is trying to roll over and be like, oh, I guess that's just what it is. I guess I'm still okay, so I don't have to worry about this because this is not happening to me personally, so I don't have to care about anybody else. I don't know the word solidarity. I have never learned anything about anything that's actually valuable and good, so I'm just gonna continue doing the same thing because that gets me liked by other people. That gets me money. That gets me something. That gets me something that I think is more valuable than any connection to any actual real human being who's authentic. I'm processing a lot, as you can see. But processing feels better. And it feels better if you do it with love too, I feel like. I was going to do more tarot, but let me actually see here. What should we do with this defeated energy, or kind of like defaulting to negative self-talk, but we actually made the right decision for us in that moment, and it's okay, and we're going to be okay, and we're going through hard times, and especially if you're part of any marginalized group that is really suffering, you need to understand that's your reality of your life, and you can't always like be responsible for everything, for other people's actions. They're responsible for their actions. You are responsible for your actions, but just, I think we're getting the gist here, Again, instant manifestation. This instant action is something that's coming through. And it's interesting because this is the June in the Fire Horse year, which is horse and fire horse. So the horse is meeting itself basically, and that kind of amplifies that fiery action energy. So this month in particular, in this year, which is extremely rare, by the way, like like every 180 years or something like that. The last time that this was like in 1840 something, and that is significant. It feels like action, rapid action, or you know, and not just that. It's something that already came around before. It's a lesson. It's and since we're talking about this negative self-talk and this like thinking that you're the problem, that kind of being the programming, and you're kind of trying to unravel that and unlearn that, right? And this is it. This is what you're supposed. This month is going to give you tests for that. You're gonna somehow it's going to come up in your life, even if it's not super explosive or anything. It doesn't have to be anything particular. You will know for yourself what that means to you. But you now have this perfect energy, and this energy supports you in acting, and acting immediately, recognizing that this is what it is, and you know what? Now I have the energy will come. You will act, and it doesn't mean that if you're not doing anything, you're gonna, have a horrible time. That's not what I'm saying. Because doing something also, what do you mean by that, right? Like, it can be literally just changing the way you talk to yourself in your own head. That might not be seen by anybody else. Maybe it will, because your attitude might change. You might actually feel better because you're not constantly hating on yourself, and you're actually seeing your worth the way it actually is. And you're kind of moving through so many years in the past that you've not done this. You've just beaten yourself down, which is exactly what they wanted you to do, so they don't have to do it for you. But now every day you exist and you're not doing that is such a radical act. That's radical. Like, the things that are being called radical nowadays, I'm like, crazy. Anyway, instant manifestation. Soul and mind working together create a dream in the heart. You have nothing to lose. You carry the dream. Your intention is pure. Be ready to receive. And with the intention thing, right? Because sometimes people say the opposite of good is meaning good, like meaning well. And the question is, what is your intention? Because if you mean well, but your intention is kind of like, well, I mean well, but I'm just doing it to appear good, to appear like I'm doing something, then it's not really a pure intention, is it now? And, or you're trying to do something just to fulfill your role, which is something that, we rely heavily on social roles, on very strict categories of what those social roles entail, which is why we're in this complete period of chaos, because people are losing their minds, especially those who are maybe an older generation, maybe more used to those kind of categories, whereas younger people like me have already kind of like done away with those things because they realize that it's horrible. They've seen it in their parents, maybe their parents saw it in their parents, like this has been going on. This is not like sometimes I feel like young people are just so forgotten that you really think that they just don't exist, and they don't have anything in their brains going on. Like, if you remember anything about your own life, you know that you were well aware of your surroundings. You may have not known every single word for it or could perfectly articulate it, but you feel it. As a child, you feel when your parents are, fighting or something. You're not immune to that. And you may forget about it in your mind, but your body will sure remember. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Inner strength. Wild and wonderful. And this aligns so much with, that kind of fiery energy. And it's also very much the magician. I'm seeing the magician here in this, or like it looks like a witch, but I'm seeing the magician because it's also the wand, and like I'm creating something. Like, I'm creating my reality right now. Like, you outside, no. You're doing something and you're using your wild energy that you've been told is bad. You think it's an illness. Like, it's incredible the things I'm learning because I've learned about nostalgia. I was reading one of the emotions in the box of emotions, which we're going to do in a second. But nostalgia used to be seen as a disease because I think it was about soldiers. It was during that time, when a lot of war was happening. And how dare a soldier actually be like sad that they're at war and fucking missing their home, you know? Because no soldier actually wants to do it. You're just being pushed into those positions because every single fucking cent goes into military, but not into actually changing people's lives. No, just anyways. Some people would argue, well, you have to fight, but I'm not gonna go into this topic right now. But all right, inner strength. Don't lose yourself in things you can't change. Focus on the things you can change. Attitude, mindset, and energy. You've got everything you need. And that's the thing. You just gotta remember it. You just gotta remember it. And you have to unprogram yourself, unlearn things. And that can be difficult, especially if you've been relying on certain information for your entire life and you realize it was bullshit. That sucks. It does suck. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm gonna be so for real because we have to be for real here. Because we're not gonna help each other if we're not gonna be real. It's not gonna work. It's not gonna last. And we're just trying to actually like rebuild this world. We're not trying to do the same bullshit. We can take some things that are good, sure, but we can't just continue doing something that we know is bad. Or pretend like we're, the ones that are quite privileged are the ones that are the victims right now because they can't say a racial slur that they grew up with that was normal. That, oh yeah, we can say this racial slur, we don't mean that. What now? What now? All right. Wild and wonderful. Why focus on limitations and realism? Breakthroughs and miracles require no linear explanation or method. Unexplainable and illogical magic happens every day. And this just illustrates it more, because this is the kind of society where you are caged in, not just physically, you can't even walk freely, but in your mind, you're caged. And then at some point, you will understand that you are the one keeping the cage. You have the power to open. Like, there was always a way out. There was always a way out, but it's so out of reach. It feels so out of reach because everybody else is just as stuck as you. There is no role model. Maybe there are certain people. Certain people have certainly broken out and, became role models for revolutionary change. The question is, who are you going to be? Are you going to be that person? Or are you going to just be stuck your entire life and just live like that? And that's why I also don't get when people try to judge young people when they're not doing exactly what they're expected to do, especially if they don't disagree with the way we do things and they want to do things differently and they would be perfectly happy to participate in changing the society and participate in working towards that common goal rather than doing the same bullshit that their parents have been doing or the same whatever and just accepting that this is the way it is. No. I am not gonna accept that actually because I actually value myself. Just because you don't value yourself, I'm supposed to do the same thing? I don't think that's fair. I think you're projecting something onto me right now. And once you understand that, that's powerful. That's honestly powerful. I don't think a lot of people can actually do that. Like, I certainly don't see a lot of examples of it. Usually it's the ones that, already kind of have that spark in them, I guess. I'm not trying to demean anybody else, but it's just the ones that really are loud and they speak out. And usually it's the ones that are already extremely marginalized because they don't have any other choice. They have to do something. And then they are always the ones that are blamed for complaining. They're always the ones that are, why aren't you doing this though? Why aren't you doing it like that? Like, they're doing something, you're not. They're doing something, and then you criticize them for everything they're doing, rather than doing something yourself and maybe seeing how it actually is. Anyways, it's a long day, it's a long life, but it's also not so long. So, you know, life seems long at certain points in your life when you haven't lived that much, because then your frame of reference is just not as big. But at some point you will get it. So I want to pull out this box of emotions. So I think we want to say, how can we alchemize this? And either we can ask what emotion is there and how can we alchemize it and what will appear, or I think that's more interesting actually. Okay. Oh, this doesn't. Well, maybe it works because I don't know. I have like these between cards where there are more than one emotion on there, but that's not really specific. But it's kind of like a divider card. So what emotions there that can be transformed? And we also have visual representations. Oh, that well, there were three actually. Oh, this wanted to come out. I'm telling you, this had to come out because it makes so much sense. You can't just not make it up. I'm sorry, you cannot make the stuff up. So two definitely stand out to me, and the other one is interesting, but we're gonna go on in a second. All right. Bathroom break. Bake. Let's bake in the bathroom. Beautiful. All right. Depends on what kind of baking. All right. So first of all, we have humiliation, then we have guilt, and then we have surprise. So we're looking at what emotions are there that we can transform, right? So humiliation. In 1863, Abraham Lincoln proclaimed the 30th April a day of national humiliation. Interesting. America, he argued, had become intoxicated with unbroken success, too self-sufficient, too proud. Sounds familiar. The Civil War had blighted the country, had been God's retribution for this arrogance. Only penitence, prayer, fasting, all leading to a collective feeling of humility, could prevent similar atrocities in the future. Could it though? Because then it's not the same people anymore that did all that. That's interesting. And it's 1863, and I don't know if it was a mistake, because I was talking about this period, right? This June period, and how it was already there like 180 years ago. And the person I was talking about it was saying, I don't know if it's correct, maybe they misspoke, but it was from something like 1846 to 64 or something, like, because this was 1863. So that's why I was like, wait a second. And I'm not saying that's it. Maybe they misspoke, but if I remember correctly, that's exactly what they said. So it's interesting, that time frame, right? Because that means that we're in a similar time frame when it comes to like energetically. We're talking not about like, we're talking about metaphors here. But okay, let's continue to read. At the time of Lincoln's speech, humiliation made you modest and respectful. But today, humiliation is something unwelcome, something punishing rather than actively sought out. It's hard to pinpoint the exact moment humiliation and humility began to part ways. Interesting, because I always talk about humiliation rituals, which they certainly exist. But it depends who you are. Yeah? Deliberately humiliating a prisoner is a gross violation of their human rights. See, it's more that kind of humiliation, you know? The human rights violation kind of humiliation, not humility, because the ones that should practice the humility are the ones that are practicing that humiliation on people that they think they are above. Um, but a request that we be humble, the demand made by some to check your privilege, we know that one, has been criticized for shifting debate. Hmm. Oh, for stifling, sorry, has been criticized for stifling debate, meaning that people are not, they're not willing to talk about it anymore because they're embarrassed about their own things that they might have done because of their privilege or they ignored because of their privilege. But in the spirit in which it was originally intended, it is also a call to practice humility, to recognize the ways in which our happiness and achievements might be the result of class, gender, race, and luck, as much as hard work. This is a recognition that the good things in our lives are not always all of our own making, but depend on other people too. And this is so important. This is such an important concept to understand right about now, but always, especially in this type of system that relies on these hierarchies, right? It's just incredible how this fits so perfectly, because you might even feel humiliated because for the longest time you may have had these negative patterns, you may have had this negative self-talk, whatever it is for you, right? And you feel like, wait, I don't have to do that, and it wasn't actually my fault in the first place, and this is like system made, and I've been doing this to myself this entire time. That's humiliating. That's somewhat humiliating, you know? This is what they got me to do to myself, right? That's incredible. Guilt. The next one, guilt. Guilt is a ghoulish sort of queasy sensation which keeps reappearing. We can speak of feeling guilty, yet in the same breath imply we've done nothing wrong. Some people take too little responsibility, others too much. The phrase having a guilt complex became a voguish diagnosis in the early 20th century. As psychotherapist Alfred Adler put it in 1927, the guilt complex is a combination of self-accusation and repentance. Sound familiar? Which strives for superiority on the useless side of life. Even guilt itself, with its worrying obsession with self-punishment and blame, was a kind of avoidance. We feel guilty instead of doing what we know we ought. This Adlerian version of guilt has been influential in the modern self-help movement, in which guilt is seen to be the enemy of productivity and personal fulfillment. Which is true, but of course you have to see it from that perspective of like, what is this guilt actually trying to tell you, right? Most of us find ourselves stuck in interminable conversations with ourselves. Was it our fault or theirs? Should we take more responsibility or less? And this is exactly the kind of back and forth that you will have. The truth usually lies somewhere in between. It's less a question of making guilt vanish than adjusting to its background hum. You can't just be like, no, just put it away, because it has some what's the word I'm looking for? Some purpose, right? Like that's why I'm talking about privilege as well and understanding your position in life and in this specific constellation, right? By the way, this is the visual representation that they chose for humiliation. And that's interesting. It's it's kind of, it has that, like, it starts high but then it kind of goes lower. And wait, did they say that? So yeah, it's that your arrogance was too much and you have to be humbled. Like, take it down a notch, you know? Guilt. Very confusing. Very much like going all over the place, right? This is the back and forth here that you can see. Was it my fault? Was it theirs? Was it this? Was that? Was this? Was it? Right? Interesting. And we have surprise. In 1872, Charles Darwin conducted a curious experiment at London Zoo. Standing before a tank containing a deadly adder, Darwin thrust his nose against the glass with the firm determination of not starting back if the snake struck. No sooner had the angry reptile lunged at the glass than Darwin skittered several paces backwards. This is weirdly worded. No sooner had the angry reptile lunged at the glass than Darwin skittered several paces backwards. The fact that so many of our feelings rise up without our permission. He couldn't not do that. He couldn't not flinch, is what I'm hearing. And that's surprise, right? The fact that so many of our feelings rise up without our permission is part of what makes them both exasperating and alluring. It was these moments which particularly intrigued Charles Darwin. He wondered if these unnecessarily emotional responses were vestiges, emotional habits left over from much earlier times. Darwin's theory called into question the cherished idea that our emotions express some innermost part of yourselves. Interesting. Replacing it with a picture of human feelings shaped by vast forces, which stretched far beyond the margins of our individual lives. He showed us that our emotions don't entirely belong to us, and that though we might fondly imagine ourselves to be the drivers of our bodies, we are more like passengers along for a ride. That's a good point. Of course, you can still disagree with that, but like, it makes sense. Surprise. There's like the surprise jolt in the middle, and it's like, oh, suddenly everything's reversed. Suddenly everything's like upside down. Hmm. Alright, so these are the ones that are there and they can be alchemized. And maybe there was some kind of surprise when it comes to that. Humiliation and guilt, of course, make a lot of sense, which is what we talked about, and that's the thing. It's not bad to be humble or, to be, what is it? It's not humiliation, it's being humble. It's, what's the other word? Humility. Exactly, that's what I was looking for. Humility is not the part that we're looking at. We're looking at humiliation. Why are you humiliating yourself? Why are other people humiliating you? Or are they humiliating you for having a reaction to something? And maybe, when we look at that, our emotions don't necessarily just belong to us, because our reactions to something have, something else happened for us to react. And we all affect each other, and that's how it works, right? Like, that's how this entire social media things happen. And oh wow, I just got an interesting message. I didn't know that they would do that. Nice. Anyways, there are good people in the world. Okay, there's still hope. Definitely do not lose hope, because that's how we do. We keep it alive. But now, what can we alchemize it to? Is the question, and then we're gonna end this because I'm like drained. All right. So what can we alchemize it? Again. All right. You know what? I'm gonna take this one because this just makes sense. Because I'm taking the entire deck, which also includes the between ones, which have a bunch of different emotions on them. And they don't have the explanation, so we don't have them, but maybe we can look them out or something. But the main thing that sticks out to me here is possibility. Possibility, and then it says anticipation, hopefulness, wanderlust, which is German heritage actually, curiosity, uncertainty. Curiosity, uncertainty. This is what we can move towards. Something becomes possible because you were like not telling yourself that it's not possible. It's just not possible because of this and that. It's just not possible. You're thinking differently. Your mind will change. You will think about how you can make something possible. Doesn't mean that everything is going to be possible all the time, but you're going to have a very different perception of the world around you and what you're capable of, right? And that with that understanding of like also what we just were talking about, the emotions are not your own. We have reflexes, right? We have the surprise reflex, and that they just rise up. These emotions just rise up, and that's the thing. We learn that kind of in meditation, right? Like you look at your emotions and you acknowledge that they're there, but they can just move on. They're just visitors. They're not something that is our entire being. It's something that moves through us, right? And usually it has some type of purpose. There's a reason why you feel embarrassed sometimes. There's a reason why this and that. And they may be societal reasons, and they may be outdated, or they may change over time, but there are also other things that are more fixed, I suppose. But if I can get any of these here, hopefulness, Wanderlust. It's certainly interesting. There are a bunch of different emotions here, right? And there are so many different ones, but we can all experience them. Was it anticipation? Yes. Courage, vengefulness. And we can connect with each other with these experiences, and we also all know what it feels like, to us at least. This is okay. There's also like, curiosity and there we go. All right, so we have anticipation was right, hopefulness, and wanderlust, curiosity, and uncertainty. Okay, we're gonna go through them and then that's it. All right, anticipation. Anticipation is a tiny theft of pleasure, a reckless spending of delights not yet owned. Until the mid-19th century, and I understand this motion a lot. Until the mid-19th century, an anticipation was a sum of money spent before it was earned, like debt, like an early payout on the dowry and advance on next week's wages. Perhaps it's this whiff of the scandalous "neither a borrower nor a lender be" which makes some adults firmly budget their children's expectations. Or perhaps it's just their familiarity with the effects of disappointment. Disappointment, also another emotion. And that's interesting because if you're someone who has dealt with a lot of disappointment, you're going to resonate with this. Looking forward to an event, and how can you be disappointed? Do you have to have expectations to be disappointed? Looking forward to an event is one thing. Savoring in technicolor detail what will happen when the lights dim and the curtain goes up or the birthday present is finally opened is, however, not for the faint-hearted. That is quite true. Anticipation is an exquisite torture. It's there in the hands poised to tickle, and in the scent of baking with curls through the house. It may be that the cake comes out flat, or the game abruptly ends when foreheads painfully bump. But it doesn't really matter. In those brief moments of anticipation, the pleasure is absolute and sublime. And I think with that, in the context of this reading, I think it could be, anticipation for more of, that shift in your consciousness, more, positive experiences, less negative self-talk. When when you understand something, have some kind of epiphany, or like just suddenly something clicks. You think you have it, and then you have it, but then there's still a process of getting there. Because it's a practice. You don't just suddenly change. So you're already anticipating that, and it's kind of great in a way of like, oh, finally this is gonna be good, but you don't necessarily know what's gonna happen, and you don't know what it will take to get there yet. But then you can also have hope. We have hopelessness. First of all, let's look at the anticipation. This is the visual representation here. And yeah, it's interesting because it's like dark around, but there's this spike like in between. Not spike, but like, there's a spike of like the pleasure part of it, I think. Because it's like, well, I'm kind of excited, but it's not there yet. So I'm kind of sad that it's not happening yet because I would love to experience it right now. But then it's like, but then you're thinking of like how it would feel, and then it would be like, oh, it's so good. This is what it will feel like. And then you're like, well, it's not actually happening yet. So I'm still like, well, kind of like, I can't experience it yet. So that's kind of what I'm seeing there. Anyways, hopefulness. When the sociologist Barbara, we love sociologists. Ooh. When sociologist Barbara Ehrenreich, what's with the Germans all around? They're everywhere. Okay. Was diagnosed with breast cancer, she was surprised how coercive she found the insistence to keep optimistic. Her subsequent account, Smile or Die, describes how the positive psychology movement, which insists on a link between a positive attitude and improved well-being, has co-opted hope. What does this mean? Can hope really press back the march of cancerous cells? Wait, sorry, did I understand this correctly? Her subsequent account, Smile or Die, describes how the positive psychology movement, which insists, okay, the positive psychology movement has co-opted hope, meaning it's just hope, but now they call it positive psychology. Anyways, can hope really press back the march of cancerous cells? There's probably no harm in finding out, except that Ehrenreich also cites a 2004 study which suggests that continually looking on the bright side of a cancer diagnosis did not always help patients. A hopeful outlook might make life easier for carers and family members, but many of the patients themselves found it alienating, even guilt-inducing. There we have the guilt. Interesting that we're looking at this as well, because this could be the flip side of hopefulness, and we have it already on the other side, right? And it prevented them from acknowledging and expressing the fear and anger they also felt. And this is extremely important, actually, because if we're looking at hopelessness, we can be hopeful. But there is this kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like toxic part of that. Because if you only look at this positive side, and there are dark sides to it, but you're not acknowledging that they're there, it's just the same as suppression. You're just pressing down the ball in a pit of water, and then the more you press it down, the more it will spring up once you let go. You know? And I love to use that analogy because it works so well for repressed emotions. Um, and I think this is something that a lot of people criticize, especially also when it comes to privilege and stuff like that, because spiritual bypassing, or like toxic positivity, I think is what they call it also, you know, it can be harmful, even though it's positive, right? It's framed as positive, but that's the thing with the intention. If your intention is pure, it's a different thing, but you're trying to bypass the bad thing. You're trying to ignore what is actually happening, and that can be harmful to someone, right? The idea that hope can be manufactured at will seems at odds with what hopefulness so often feels like. With its flickering promise of a happier ending, it is a glimpse of relief in a desperate situation when we have reached the end of all that we might practically do. We know hoping might leave us feeling cheated or let down, but this vulnerability is also a strength. To feel hope is to acknowledge how little control that we so often have, which is true. So, and I think this is something that, people say hope is the last thing that will still last, because that's the one that you're going to cling to when you don't have anything else left. At least there's hope. At least there's hope. We keep hope alive, because we hope for better days. We hope for something. And it's interesting that we find guilt here again, and all these negative feelings um, that can arise. And also, what was it that I was seeing? Um, I was thinking that hope can also be an action potentially, because I was looking at love as an action and then hope as an action, because that's actual like manifestation of something like in the physical world. You may be doing something that elicits hope in other people. And I've seen this happen, I've seen this happen on social media, people reacting to other people and being like, you know what? I was such in a bad mood and I thought everything was so bad and people are bad and everything. But then you did this video and talked about this topic and you actually expressed what you were feeling. And then I had so much hope for this world suddenly, because I saw someone expressing something that I was actually feeling inside. And acknowledging the bad parts. That's exactly the point. You want this authentic experience. You want to know that you're not alone. You want to know that people crash out exactly the same as you do all the time, and they're not okay. And you're not okay. And we're both acknowledging that we're not okay and we want to do something. We want to support each other. We want to tell each other that, you know what, it's okay. I'm going through the same thing, you know. And I'm also seeing that it kind of looks like I have a Silberblick, but anyways, other topic. Wanderlust. Perhaps it begins with a restless twitch. Perhaps with a fascination with a distant country or landscape, a kind of yearning for a place you've never visited but have seen pictures of. We may long to leave a footprint on a glacier or hear an echo of our voice across a lake at dawn. But perhaps most of all, we want to experience the world we made new again. The German word Wanderlust, the pleasure of hiking, first came out of a defiant romantic tradition of solitary walking. See also loneliness. Interesting. Romantic tradition of solitary walking. In the 1880s, the idea that humans might have a natural desire to roam was a popular one. Evolutionary theory had suggested that the human body could play host to ancient impulses. Though Victorians may have feared the eruption of the nomadic instinct, in small doses it was welcomed. This is interesting. There's a lot to say about this, but I'm not going to go too much into it because I'm done already, but like maybe we can pick it up again at some point. But it's interesting that it's like from a society that also colonized the world, So let's keep that in mind. But then there are also settlers, right? Like that's the thing. You don't want to be nomadic. That's bad. But wanting to go somewhere and then settle over there, even though it's not your land, that's cool. Whatever, right? Anyways, not least because its discovery coincided with the birth of the modern tourist industry. There we go. There we go. Now, what did I say? I didn't even read this before, so I don't know. With Cook's tours. Cook. Bitch, that's crazy. I know someone whose name's Cook, and it was originally Koch, so... The Germans. Ay, ay, ay. And the publication of the first tourist guides, the Bedecker series, yeah, that looks... Anyways. And the popularity of exotic travelers' tales from the likes of Jules Verne and Mark Twain. Europeans had never before been more ready to be on the move. Exotic. We are the inheritors of the late 19th century moment of fascination with Wanderlust. In it we find a craving for adventure and discovery, which, just as it propels us towards the future, reminds us of our ancient past. Which is true, I do resonate with that, but it is interesting to look at it in the context of those times as well, because that's always important to recognize, right? And of course, we didn't exist at that time. We only have the information that we do have, right? So we also have to keep that in mind as well. and what narratives made it through to now, what kind of stories were left behind long ago, who is keeping those stories alive, right? Curiosity. It's the itch to find out more, and that kind of aligns with that, right? The temptation to glance at an open diary or strain to decipher an argument behind you on the bus. It's the restless desire that we have desire, sorry, that make Leonardo da Vinci ask, what makes what makes birds fly? I've been talking too much and swallowing too much air. How does the heart beat? With curiosity, and that's the interesting thing too about Leonardo da Vinci specifically. We can talk about him as a person, but he was an artist and a scientist, so he combined those two, which I find fascinating. So evolutionary psychologists have suggested that our natural curiosity about one another is one key to our evolutionary success, and I agree with that one. Because this kind of exclusionary narrative and attitude towards other people, it's like the worst thing that we could ever do. We can learn so much from each other. We can respect each other. We can interact with each other, potentially. Maybe if we find a similar language, Okay. But that doesn't make us any happier to be on the receiving end of someone else's curiosity. See, there is a lot of paradox in our lives, it seems. Curiosity can overreach. It stumbles into forbidden knowledge, not stopping to think whether what emerges will be hurtful. Mm-mm. Oh, I know. Oh, I've known. Like sometimes you see things that you're like, I wish I just didn't see that and didn't have that image in my brain right now. That's why I never saw Two Girls, One Cup. Don't you dare show it to me. Okay. 5 centuries ago in England, eavesdropping was illegal. Today, it is the surreptitious accumulation of intimate capital. The photographs, the snippets of information used for blackmail and by tabloid journalists, which must be policed. Suspicion of other people's curiosity is nicely captured by the Swedish word for an eavesdropper. I'm going to butcher this. Tjuvilusnar. I don't know. I cannot. I'm sorry. A listen thief, lurking and snatching poorly guarded secrets. The listen thief profits with the titillations of forbidden knowledge, or simply cold hard cash. This is truly the flip side. And this is also why you have power, in a way. If you lose that shame that was put upon you and that kind of policing, action. Because this is how the system also perpetuates itself, because everybody feels this shame, right? They all feel it, and they don't want to see it in other people because it triggers them, and they're like, no, stop it right now, stop it, because this triggers me. So stop what you're doing right now, because you're actually questioning that, and it could help them to liberate themselves, but they're not seeing it like that, right? But if you're not embarrassed of anything because you are looking at it not from a shame perspective, but just from a human perspective, because we're all human, we can hide as much as we want, we can pretend as much as we want, but it wouldn't be titillating if it's not like forbidden. But if you're like, this is forbidden, but why is it forbidden? Of course, I'm not talking about like heinous acts. I'm just talking about like societal faux pas, or like wearing colorful hair. That's like not a bad thing to do. Like that's not harming anybody, really. I don't think so. Well, some would argue differently. Uncertainty. Uncertainty is often characterized as an unpleasant emotional experience. When we are motivated to avoid, feeling doubtful at life's biggest junctions can be hard to tolerate. Yet, though predictability temporarily solves us, hesitations and doubts are part of the architecture of our lives. Even the most advanced theoretical physicists can't give us answers. According to Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, you might recognize this, it's impossible to know both the size and mass of a particle at any one time, since each time you try to measure one, the other changes. So interesting to me. I'm going to say something about this. Is if this is the condition of our subatomic universe, okay, they're already saying it. I think you can bet it's the condition of our day-to-day lives. And this is what I'm saying because physics is physics, right? You think of this as an abstract thing, but it's like literally informing all of our lives. Like we are made up of atoms. And if we break it down more, it's essentially energy because we couldn't survive if nothing would. It has to constantly move throughout our bodies, and our bodies have to be constantly functioning for us to be alive, for us to witness this life right now, right? Freedom, serendipity, creativity. These are the delights of uncertainty. And I'm trying to get real comfortable with it. Not knowing an outcome can be immensely pleasurable. According to many artists, there we go, the desire to find out must be resisted. Only those capable of being in uncertainties, mysteries, doubts, without any irritable reaching after fact and reason, wrote the poet John Keats, are truly free to create and explore. Allow yourself to get lost, and you might glimpse that freedom too. And I know certain people like that who are very close to me, who are very logical and fact and reason and this and that. But then at the same time, they have a very spiritual part to them. And this is the thing that certain scientists like Albert Einstein, for example, he was still religious. He was a scientist and he was still religious. He believed in God. And that's the thing, it's not mutually exclusive. All of it is connected. We are believing something, we are making it up. But how are we making it up? With our physical being. How is it working? The neurons are firing. Of course, I'm not a neurologist, I'm just saying it from like that perspective, but it makes sense. I'm sure that it can be, argued by scientists and proven already, I think. But anyways, we're not here to do a science podcast or whatever. We're just here to get some insight into ourselves with reflection tools, which is what we're doing. All right? Sorry. So I just want to tell you, let's get it together again. So the emotions that we're feeling are humiliation, guilt, and surprise. And we can alchemize and transform them into possibility. And we have to free ourselves from this logic and reason to be able to explore, to be able to see a different way. And maybe that's something that may have held you back, and that's also part of the society as well, because there's a lot of, we're basing it on logic, we're basing it on this and that, and there's no wiggle room. There's only this category, this category, this category. And categories can be helpful to a certain extent to actually talk about something, to actually have some kind of representation of knowing what we're talking about, like a reference of what this phenomena is. Like we can't just always say this is the phenomenon of this and the. No, we just give it a word so we can talk about it, But we also always have to be careful to not box ourselves in so much, because all of the knowledge that we have comes from somewhere. And especially when it comes to social sciences, it's ever changing, because that's how we function. Societies change over time. We change over time. Literally change is part of our physical being. Like our cells renew and such, right? This is natural. This is the most natural thing ever. If someone wants to tell you that's not natural, it's just natural to be a machine, be a robot, and just live your life like that, and just wait till you die to be happy and experience life, if you ever get to that point, right? But we're trying to change the narrative here. We're trying to change it. And of course you don't like that. The ones who are profiting off of this entire system and are not caring about the lives of the people that are affected. They just care about themselves, I guess. That's what it looks like. All right? But we're not going there. We're looking at the possibilities. We're not being defeatist. We're not taking on that attitude that they are trying to push on us to make us debilitated so we can't do anything anymore. We can't even think. We can't even think in a way that would liberate us. Oh no, that doesn't make any logical sense. Oh, they would say that if I do this. If I say this, they're gonna not accept me anymore. They're gonna think I'm crazy. Of course they would think you're crazy. That's the point. You're supposed to seem crazy for being a human being. That's crazy. And then you're being dehumanized if you decide to say something about it and maybe even be emotional about it, which is something we all experience, which is something we just learned about emotions because we all have them, all right? And you can pretend as much as you want like you don't, and like you're so logical, and you can completely detach yourself, and maybe maybe you are really detached because that's also part of it, and maybe you've had traumatic experiences that actually made you so detached from your emotions because you literally cannot handle it in your body, like your body just can't. So it's actually doing something to protect you, which is great. It's working, but you can't live your life like that. It's not living, it's just surviving. It's just surviving that situation. And I don't know, I would wish something better for you, honestly, because I want us to live our lives. I want us to exist as we are, and you know in our diverse forms, which is just human nature. We come in many different shapes and sizes. We have many different existences. We're not all the same, and someone who wants to tell you that is telling you something that's just untrue. And it's not about the same worth. I'm gonna love you and leave you. Bye bye.